Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. Today, I'm joined by truly an industry legend, a bit of a hero of mine, and I saw on LinkedIn something you called yourself, which I'm going to use. You said historian as opposed to analyst. I'm really pleased to welcome Steve Morrell of Contact Babel to Get Out of Rap. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, if I'm going for 25 years, it starts to get into the kind of history territory rather than, this is what's happening today. So it's like, yes, as we just mentioned, I mean, this is the 23rd year we've been running this report. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Some of the things that changed, some things that haven't changed. And yeah, I think what comes after historian, archivist, archaeologist, you know, hopefully I'm not going anywhere. So,
Indiana Jones style.
yes, yeah, well, up to a point, isn't it? Yeah.
I just think I've shared this with you before. In especially, you must have seen this over the 23 years of doing it, but in general, not just our industry, but society's got so noisy and so quick to jump to opinions. What I've loved about the UK contact center decision makers guide is you can base your conversations on facts. There's never been a more comprehensive report that you do, and I think the industry is better for it. And the fact that this is now 23 years you've been doing it, it's it's kind of like, I imagine what people that are mega fans of like Harry Potter are like when a new book, when I know it's coming out, I'm like, great, brilliant. But you must have seen so much change from that very first one in 2003 then.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, some things have changed, and some things, haven't. So, for example, top of my head, I think the average speed to answer back in the good old days was something like 19 seconds, and people are complaining about that. And now it's like 2 minutes. So that's one thing that really has changed. I mean, obviously that's not the be all and end all, but that's the first thing that sprung to my head. But the on the opposite side of that, we're looking at what keeps contact center managers, or call centers as they were back in the good old days,
Mm,
awake at night, and give them a big long list of things. And top of that then was improving customer satisfaction, and top of it now is improving customer satisfaction. So the more things change, the more they stay the same in some cases. But yeah, it's been a lot of changes there. And what we've tried to do, when I started Contact Babel, it was I always thought, right, we want to base this on solid data, because I worked for analyst firms before, and it was sometimes you'd have, shall we say, a partial data set, if you know what I mean. So I'm like, right, I want to be comfortable with what I'm talking about, because I've been picked apart on, doing presentations of my clients, far too often, because it didn't have the data to back me up. I'm like, right, there's no way that's happening again. So it's all been about data. We've just changed our logo this year. The logo stays the same, but it's a strap line on it. Now it says real data, real insights. So that's to kind
mm.
of emphasize what we're about. We're not about AI generated, nonsense. It's data. It's what you need. Yeah, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Nobody's got to, like say Harry Potter. I like Harry Potter myself. Nobody's got to go to sleep reading this and thinking, "Oh, I can't wait to the next chapter." But it's if you need it, you need it. Right?
Yeah. And that's the thing I've always found from, being a team leader, then a contact center manager, then moving into senior leadership. If I wanted to just feel like I could anchor my thoughts and go to that particular chapter and go, right, let's just read through where are we at in terms of this um, set of data, what's it telling me? And it could have been about anything. It might have been like, I want to think about QA, I want to think about omnichannel, I want to think about some of our KPIs and where they might sit within the industry. It was so easy just to go to the guide, look at that particular chapter, and feel like you were kind of like, okay, because let's be honest, we're all juggling so many plates, and like you say, I don't think I've not ever done it. Maybe that's a challenge to go cover to cover.
I was just going to say that I'm the only person in the history of the planet that's ever done that. And yeah, that's
But
a
you're still
challenge.
sane.
And
You're,
up to a point. Yeah, I'm used to this now. You know, it's you don't do it all in one. It can be dangerous reading the whole thing cover to cover in one. You don't know what you might come out of the other end.
But this year, then, you mentioned, I find that fascinating. The first one you mentioned, actually, the average speed of answer. You'd think with all the developments in technology and everything like that, it would have gone the other way, if anything, not 19 seconds to 2 minutes.
Yeah, you know, I've got some stats we'll have a look at in a minute, and for many years it was, you know, quite reasonable. And then in COVID, it obviously a lot of things got unreasonable very quickly. We managed as best we could,
Mm,
both professionally and personally. And I did expect then, well, okay, that's the, you know, that's what happened. That was a thing. We all dealt with it, and now we're back to normal. Um, hasn't come down. And I'm just, I am, to be honest with you, quite perplexed with that. And it would be interesting to hear from, you know, the people who are actually running contact centers to understand their specific contact center and why that has actually happened. But if you put everything together, then yeah, it's really it's not looking tremendously good. And it just seems to be one of those things that customers have kind of shrugged their shoulders now and say, well, okay, this is just how it is. And it doesn't apply for every contact center, obviously, because
mm,
this is an average. So there's some there, especially the public sector, um, often, you know, underfunded, understaffed, that, to be honest, are having a bit of a shocker
mm,
with that. It's not just public sector, but you know, it's not industry wide, but there's enough there that it pulls everything else up with it.
mm. So the decision makers guide is available now. We're going to share the details of where you can get that later. But the kind of and bit of a difficult question, but some of the things that have jumped out to you, I said to you, oh, obviously we can't go over everything,
Nope.
much as I'd like to.
Got three
um,
days for it. No.
yeah, but what's one thing you wanted to share today? One sort of theme.
Yeah, what I wanted to do is having a look through all these, you know, however many 200 charts or 300 charts, whatever it is. It was like, right, okay, how on earth am I going to pull this together? Um, and there is a big overarching theme for me, and that is that if you like, the traditional method of customers talking to organizations, viz. The live voice channel, is not dead. It's not even a bit poorly. It's as strong as ever. And I think there's evidence there to suggest that it's going to perhaps become even more important. So that might be a kind of contrarian view. And people might say, oh, well, you've been a bit reactionary there, and you know, AI and digital is the future. I'm like, well, okay, fine. You may be right, but there's a lot of data to suggest that even if that is going to be the case, it's not the case now.
Mm,
So that's kind of, I've got various bits of data from various places, and I think you can, you know, weave them together to form a coherent story that voice is still the gold standard. Customers see that, businesses see that. Um, and yes, it will change, but I don't think it's going to go away to quite the extent that we've seen. You know, various analyst firms, no names, begin with G, predicting, you know, everything, 90% of stuff's got to be handled by AI by, you know, this time next week. So it's, yeah, I'm the other side of that argument, to be honest with you.
well, let's have a look, shall we?
Okay, okay, let's see if I can get this thing to work. Right. Are we looking at the screen? And for
We
those,
are.
I've heard this thing, it showed my age here. It's like televised snooker back in the 80s. And it was on his whispering Ted. Was it listening
Ted
Ted Lowe
Lowe.
or something like yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, for those watching in black and white, the green is next to the yellow. And so I'm like thinking for these people listening rather than looking at this, we're gonna have to kind of do a bit of a description here, but that's fine. So I just need to remember that people are listening to this as well as looking at it. So what we have here to start with is a couple of charts that show KPIs, operational KPIs, average speed to answer, call abandonment rate, and call duration. So what this is showing and what I'm trying to show with this, because it goes back from to 2004, this one. So then in fact, I was wrong with the speed to answer. It was actually 16 seconds back in
We'll let you
2004.
off.
Well, you should. And then what's happened there is all the way to 2019, it's popped around the 20 to 30 second mark and things like that. It was getting up to 40%, 40 seconds in 18, 19, and then COVID hit. And you can see a big rise there, 82, 106, 120.
Mm.
And it's been around the 2 minute mark since. And as I say, that is the average. Some people are still picking up, within 10 seconds. Some people are taking 30, 40 minutes to do that public sector.
Wow. It,
And you can see that call abandonment rate tracks that really closely, between 5 and 6% most years, until the big rise in speed to answer. And then, because obviously the longer the queue, the more people are likely to give up, call abandonment rose. And then what I thought there was a really quite interesting one last year, call abandonment, despite the fact the
mm.
queue times were long, call abandonment rate really fell back to the historical normal, close to it. And I was thinking, well, maybe customers have just accepted that. Maybe that's what they accept as the new normal. There is a slight rise this year, but I wouldn't say it's particularly spectacular. But maybe customers are just accepting that and think, well, if we are going to have to pick up the phone, then make yourself a cup of tea, grit your teeth, and get on with it.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because you're dead right. That significant rise that you could say, okay, the pandemic was exceptional circumstances, once in a generation,
Mm-hmm.
and we managed to get everyone working from home, and that's bound to have had an impact. But since then, to see it rise again and now stay at that over 2 minutes, especially when we know that one of the biggest reasons that customers are frustrated, and that's reflected in however they customer satisfaction, however they score us,
Mm-hmm.
is what how long it takes, and then when they do speak to someone, is it resolved? Just
Mm-hmm.
that first call resolution.
Yeah.
It always seems to me that this is one area where we could start to win back some goodwill by really focusing on our average speed to answer, but this doesn't show any signs of dropping.
No, it doesn't. And I think that's nothing. No man is an island, and
Mm,
within the contact center industry, everything has a knock-on effect to everything else. So if we look at the chart on the right here, which is the mean call duration, and that's a very, very, unfashionable metric these days. Because obviously a call takes as long as it takes, and in this, that, and the other, and that's fine. That's a laudable answer. Yeah, because the
mm.
last thing you want is an agent dropping a difficult call because it's hitting the metrics. But um, it does impact on everything else. So call duration does impact on the things that matter. Specifically call queue time. And for those people who aren't looking at this, you're looking at it's a really nice piece of data. This, and this is why I'm like, every year I'm like, oh, lovely, it's ticked up a little bit more. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. So we started in 2004 with an average call duration of 220 seconds, which is what, 3 minutes and 40. And then with a few ups and downs each year, but it's a nice smooth rise to over 7 minutes now, 422 seconds, just over 7 minutes and 2 seconds, isn't it? And we've got sales, that's service calls, and sales calls as well have followed a similar pattern. Sales calls tend to take a bit longer, obviously. You may have payment card details or objections to overcome, and for whatever reason they're longer. We've got fewer sales calls that take part in the data, which I can see it's a bit more spiky than from year to year. They're greater spikes, but there is definite upward
Mm,
trend there.
mm.
So we're looking at, I can't even tell how long that is now, but it's well probably 8 minutes, 8.5 minutes these days for a sales call. So if you're going to do that and have these longer calls, longer, more complex calls, those that you might want to spend a bit more time on, cross-sell, upsell, relationship building, taking as long as it takes, and all of the reasons for these things, it's going to, an agent that's talking to one customer can't be back in, taking calls out the queue. And if the headcount is not rising at the same rate, then this is something that's you're in danger of this happening.
It's so
Um,
it's so interesting on a number of levels, isn't it? Again, it's another one where you think, is this telling us that the work that we do, whether it is service or sales, has got more complicated, or we've added more complexity? to it? Are there greater regulations that people have to go through? Because again, both from an employee point of view, but also from a customer's point of view, we're saying you're going to have to wait longer to speak to someone. And then when you speak to someone, it's going to take far longer now than it did do.
It is. It is. And I think you're right with saying things like, the legal obligations and compliance and things like that are far longer than they used to be and apply to more industries and more types of calls. You're right. I think the real big thing driving this is the fact that so many of the really, really easy transactional stuff has been taken out by self-service of various flavors. Most of the time, it's web self-service.
Mm,
Relatively small amount through automated web chat. Again, the telephony self-service IVR takes up a small amount, but it's mainly people self-serving on website or an app. So what's left is the more complicated stuff, the stuff that people really want to ring in about. There might be a complaint, they might be concerned about something for some reason. We'll look at that later. It might be super important to them. They might want the reassurance of talking to a person. So this is something else that I think we've talked about before, is the average cognitive load on an agent for these calls is not only longer calls, more they're more important calls to the customer. They're more difficult calls for an agent to handle, whether that's intellectually or emotionally.
mm,
And I think we have written a white paper about that. We are maybe sleepwalking to some extent into an age of agent burnout without really
mm,
realizing it. I think we need
mm,
to be aware of this, and there's not much we can do in terms of that reducing the kind of complexity and emotional elements of the call, because that's customer side, that's customer driven. But I do think we need to be very careful about how we manage our agents and understand that the job they're doing now is different from the job they were doing on the left hand side of these graphs.
mm. Yeah, me and you were lucky enough to be on a webinar, weren't we, with CX today, and this was one of the areas we touched upon, and it's seeing these stats, and I imagine they look you would look at that, especially the call duration, and think that's trending upwards. And as AI starts to again contribute to taking those transactional calls, that's going to continue and maybe potentially could increase the calls that are left in their duration. You're dead right to call out the fact that the cognitive load and the fear of burnout for our customer facing colleagues means we should be looking at the environment around them and how they're supported and what their working day looks like. And I don't hear enough of that. And hopefully, again, it's another great example of how the stats that you produce and the insight, the data and the insight that you produce could hopefully lead to people making some changes for the better for their team members.
Yeah, I mean, it's in itself. Looking at a chart like this, it's like you could shrug your shoulders and say, "Well, yeah, calls are getting longer, so what?" It's when you actually start to think, "So what? What is the
Mm,
actual impact?" And you know, you, some of what I'm saying here is kind of conjecture. Some of it is actually backed up by real bits of evidence. You can put it together and say, make a case for it, and then think, does this apply in my own contact center? Um, Something worth talking about is, you mentioned the AI there and how this may impact on the length of calls. Now, if you've got, Copilot, it depends on, where you're pointing your AI. So if we're doing it to agent assist, Copilot, whatever, or there's three parts of the call. I mean, you guys know more about this than me, but the first part of the call is customer authentication, which is happening in more cases. It's taking longer. It's so that's one thing you can point AI at, or some other form of automation. You don't need an agent to
mm,
take somebody through authentication. You can save 45 seconds on a call, which adds up to, I think, several £billion a year industry wide, not to be sniffed at. And then there's a part within the call itself, the actual talk time, and then you've got the post call wrap and after call work, whatever we want to call it. Now, if you're using AI to take out the first bit, the authentication, and a lot of the last bit, so if you're using, auto disposition, note taking, you auto QA, but not so much auto QA, but the kind of note generation that
Mm,
the agent might have to do, that looks good because then you're putting that agent back to take out, to get rid of this queue, and to help the next customer. Great stuff without kind of damaging, customer experience. And if you can use, agent assist within the call itself to suggest next best response, or struggle with saying that,
mm,
then that could, you can see how that can cut the call duration. Lovely. It's right answers, it's form filling, it's going away and writing things to CRM, it's kicking off processes. This is all fantastic. What does that mean for the agent? Now, come back to what you said on the webinar, the last webinar we did, that really, struck home with me. You were saying, using from your own experiences, this was kind of, almost like you get micro breaks within a
mm,
call.
mm.
I've got 10 seconds where I don't have to think. I can just
Yeah.
do this. But if you've got constant wah, 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 and then you're straight onto the next call, is that doable long term? Because idle time has already been reduced to what I consider to be a bare minimum. It's knocking around the 7% mark now. Back in the day, it used to be 12, 13%. So where does this leave, the poor
Mm,
agents?
mm.
Um, and
And
that's
that's where I think, we've got to look at the kind of the scheduling of what we're asking people to do.
mhm,
So at what point, and yes, there are some people making changes now saying, you know what, I have freedom to come off. I don't need to get permission. If I have a difficult call, I can come off.
right.
But we really need to look at schedules, I think, and go, at what point do we say, okay, that's enough, you've had enough? Because you're
Mm.
dead right. The transactional stuff, I want to change my due date. I need to give you a new address. Yeah, great. Love them because I can go on
Because
autopilot.
because this is it. See, the last time I worked in a call center, it was 1990, before I went to university doing tech help desk. So that's a very long time ago. So I don't have that experience. And from if you like, from an outsider's point of view, that will be somebody who knows something about the industry, I would have thought, oh well, if it's a more interesting call, generally, that's great, isn't it? But it's possible to be too interesting. You don't want to be interesting all the time. You need a bit, it's shades of grey. So yeah, that's a really valuable point for somebody who, hasn't got their hands dirty operationally. It might seem very obvious to you and people listening to this podcast, but people who are kind of making decisions about the contact center without ever having worked in there, they might think, oh well, it's just more interesting. That's great, isn't it? Everyone likes
Mm.
interesting work, but you need to kind of break it up a bit. So it's really, that's valuable information. And I've been doing this sort of thing for 28 years, and I'm still learning new things, and that's
And
one of
isn't
them.
that great?
Yeah, yes, it's it. Right, let's have a look at something else. Um, so the overarching thing, coming back to it, is the importance of voice. Um, so we've got a couple of charts here. One of them shows the proportion of interactions that need an alternative channel to get the issue resolved. And the other one is inbound interactions by channel, just to kind of set the scene for how important voice is in the great scheme of things. So I'll take the second one first. I'll take the inbound interactions by channel. So this is what's the industry as a whole is handling inbound. Haven't included web self-service in this because that's basically impossible to even quantify what is web self-service. So it's just so we're looking at telephony live agent, telephony self-service, email, web chat, social media, letters. We dropped fax a couple of years ago. Uh, and then we've got SMS messaging. So as you can see or not see, depending on how you're consuming this content, telephony is knocking around the live agent, knocking around the 63%. And this is, we have charts and other reports that track this since the olden days as well. And it's really not come down a great deal in the past few years. It's still very much sticking there, the low 60%. This is something we see in the US as well. So it's not just, it's not just a
Mm.
UK thing. Email, which I have no idea why this is so high, because it's not really suitable for a great number of things, and yet we like it. Emails 20%. Web chat is creeping up year on year. I'm still waiting for its kind of breakout album, and it's just not happening. 8%. Telephony self-service are a disappointing 4%, but this is kind of just what it is.
Mm.
Messaging 2%, social 2%, letter less than 1%.
It's
So
hanging in there though, isn't it? Go on, letter.
yeah,
0.7%.
I know it's starting to look like a rounding error, but it's still and this is it. Letter used to be a thing, and it's obviously been taken over by email.
Did,
And we'll come on
did,
to why that is. But yeah, I mean, say email, it's one of these things because everyone talks
mm,
about web chat, chatbots, web chat, blah, 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 blah. But email's outperforming it by what was that? Nearly 3 times. Yeah, no, it's 2.5 times. So yeah, it's a thing. So that's it.
are you always kind of waiting for that? You mentioned it that there's going to be this breakout moment where web chat overtakes email.
Mm, yeah, I mean, waiting for it for years. I just think, come on, because I think it's one of these dangerous things when you start thinking about, well, this is what I do, so surely everybody else on the planet does this too. Um, but no, it's because I always use web chat. That would be my primary channel for most things,
Mm.
if
But
it's all possible. But yeah, no, email fulfills a role for people when they've got a complicated thing they need to get off their or especially in the UK. It's really interesting. I'll look at a chart in a sec. Looking at it's for complaints.
mm,
A lot of complaints come over email.
mm.
So yeah, that's just it.
and I, and I think there's something about anything where you need to reassure yourself that you have a record, even though you can get
Definitely.
access to web chats. You
Yeah,
you you email anything legal,
absolutely. Yeah.
terms and conditions, like you say, asking for something. Email feels a bit more secure in terms of if I ever have to, I'm going to go back to my email. But isn't it? Uh, this is one of the things that I mentioned at the start that I've always used your work to kind of ground me because I think if you spent a lot of your time in and around tech vendor world, and I love the fact that our technology is at the forefront of what we do. I'm not poo-pooing it, but if you spend a lot of your time around vendors and or you're on even LinkedIn at times,
Mm,
you would be thinking that everyone is web chat AI world, that voice is on the way out. But look at this, 62.6% of inbound interactions are still live agents talking on the phone.
absolutely. I mean, it's important. If we go back, let's say to the depths of time when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, this was 90% when we started tracking it in 2003. So yes, it has come down, but it came down very rapidly in the early noughties, or whatever we call it. And really since then it's flattened. So that's a piece of evidence. There's a really, really solid piece of evidence that so despite everyone saying, oh, voice this, voice that, here you go. These are the
Mm,
stats. Now there's lots of reasons for this, and one of them is on the left hand side of this screen, and that's the failures of alternative channels, if I'm going to say that. Now, not necessarily failures, but sometimes channels are just kind of they're not the right ones for people to
mm,
use, and they think, well, do you know what? I'll roll the dice. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, because it worked for this business A, because they've got really good email or something, but business B doesn't. So, what proportion of these interactions through email, web chat, and social media then require an alternative channel, which is almost always live voice, to solve this? So when you add these up, it's very complicated. And so, where we've just boiled it down to the actual figure, we're looking at 18% of emails, 18% of web chats, and 29% of social then need an alternate channel. So this is driving demand
mm,
in the live voice channel. It's also not helping customer experience, obviously. it's also not helping everybody else. So if, again, going back to when email started to become a channel in the early noughties, I remember the hype around it, and it was very much like, oh, by 2003, 50% of stuff is going to be happening through email. And people genuinely believe this. This wasn't just a vendor driven thing. This was like, oh yeah, this is definitely happening. Oh, look at this new email thing. It's a thing. And spoiler alert, it didn't happen. Um, in fact, what happened was so many companies threw up the email channel and directed people to send them an email and then didn't bother replying, or replied back
Mm.
37 working years later, or whatever. It spoiled the whole thing for everybody. It
Mm.
inoculated the customer base against that channel for years. And this is something that I am a little concerned about may happen with web chat. So some web chat, kind of AI enabled web chat, if we're going to use that, can, understand natural language and, go out and, search things and synthesize and generate new answers and actually genuinely be of help and, kick off processes and, really good stuff. Other stuff is really, very rules based. It can only do a certain thing. It might just lock you in a loop if you don't ask something in the right way. And to a customer, they both look the same. They're both a little chatbot in the bottom right-hand corner of a website saying, how can I help you today? And until you kind of, engage with them, you don't know what flavor you're getting.
Mm.
So this is, the ways of handling web chats are, very, very different. You don't know what you're going to get. It's the same thing when you send an email to a company. Nowadays, it's much better. But when you send an email to a company, am I going to get a response within an hour? Am I never going to get a response, full stop? And then I have to pick up the phone. So there's no, at least with telephony, you've got a certain level of consistency there. Eventually you're going to get the phone answered, and you'll probably get your issue resolved. And that's one of the reasons why live voice is still super important, because customers have just learned, if you want, yeah, it might need a lot of effort. You don't actually know a lot of the time how long the queue is going to be, because even these days people won't tell you, which is strange for me, but whatever. But at the end of it, you're going to get a response from a person that's trained and has the information in front of them. And
Mm.
it's not glamorous. For the customer, they've done this for like decades or something like that. But that's the key. That's the gold standard for customer service in terms of channels, and nothing's changed.
I'm always surprised that people don't make more use of offering customers like a callback service. So, I know in my life there are certain times when I would value getting a call if it was to help me with something that I'd kind of gone on, engaged with, and needed to resolve. But I guess the problem is the extent to which that call happens when it's meant to.
This nail on the head, Martin. Absolutely. I mean, I know how this stuff works, and yet I never choose callback option. I
Mm.
always choose to wait, because I'm like, I've been burnt by this before. Yeah.
Mm.
It's like, and then you're waiting there, it's like, is the phone going to ring? Is the phone? It's just as
Yeah.
bad as being in the queue. It's,
Yeah, that's true.
it is.
Yeah.
So it's, maybe some people are chill with that, but, I'm like, how long do I have to wait for this call back? If they say, we will definitely call you back within 20 minutes, or we'll send you a large wheelbarrow full of cash, then I'd click that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're like, well, if you fancy call back within an hour, press this button. Sure, might make you feel better. I don't know. I just think it's one of those things, again, that companies haven't really lent into in a way that gives a customer enough reassurance that it's going to happen.
Mm.
So, but
Yeah,
if I stay in a queue, it's going to get answered eventually.
that's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
because if it doesn't happen once, you'll never choose it again.
yeah, yeah. This is it. Yeah, with anything new with the customers, we are a terribly conservative lot. We tend to, stick with what we know, and this is, I think, we always have to remember that. What we've seen we do customer research as well. So we interview hundreds of companies. We also survey thousands of customers.
Mm.
And we ask them lots of questions about attitudes and behavior and experience and things like that, especially around AI now. And in the main, they're willing to try new things, if they think if it's phrased in a way, this is going to make your life easier or better, or you'll be able to do it 24/7 or whatever, people are like, okay, yeah, I'll give it a whirl. And then you have to deliver. So for goodness sake, don't put anything up there unless you actually can meet those expectations, because as I say, it's what the experience they have is then going to be fed into that, say, channel for the sake of it, or app, bot, whatever, for everybody else as well. It's not just, oh, the company's Ace thing doesn't work. It's like,
Mm.
this thing doesn't work. I tried it and it didn't work. Oh, I found it on another website or another company. No, I don't want to use it. I've already tried it.
Yeah.
So it is a danger, that.
But that's another angle that I love, that you combining our world in terms of what leaders are telling you in terms of responding to the survey, but also going out to customers and a sizable number of them
Mm.
and saying what's important to you, where are your frustrations, how's their behavior changed. I think it's great. And here we go.
Yeah. So nicely leading into some of our customer work. So a couple of charts here, and these are the last two I've got for you. So customer channel preference for telephony from 2018 when we started tracking it to back end of last year. I'll talk about that in a sec. And then we asked, for the first year, I think it was, possibly the second year, whatever, concerns about the difficulty of service in general. So split by age group. Because if we're going to kind of stereotype older customers, then at least we need to have the data to back that up.
Do you know what?
So,
It's depressing that as this report has been around, I'm moving categories to the right rapidly.
I know, yeah. Tell me about it.
So this is concerns about difficulty reaching a human agent when dealing with AI and customer service by age
Yes.
range. And what's
So
it telling
so
us,
so what
Steve?
we did with these series of questions, it's like, well, I was thinking, right, okay, what let's try and find out how happy customers are going to be to use AI, which circumstances. And there are some circumstances when they would actually prefer to use AI rather than talk to a customer. So that was really interesting for me. It wasn't like, yeah, we're not bothered as whatever gives the quickest response. It was like, there are some times where want to use AI or automation rather than talk to a person. Some of that was around age group. The younger age groups are much less likely to want to pick up the phone, which if you've
Mm,
got kids, you'll understand and agree with. And the other thing was for me, sensitive, confidential, personal issues. Um, we found this in things like debt collection and stuff like that. They might well be preferring to talk to automation or AI.
mm, yeah.
And obviously, we've got issues there if it's out of hours or stuff like that, because customers aren't expecting you to pick up the phone at 3 a.m. or whatever, whenever you wanted to contact them. But they do appreciate it if they can self-serve then. So it's whatever's easy for the customers. And one of the things was, right, okay, so what are your concerns about with AI and customer service? How do you feel about that? So things like, I'm worried about job losses and things like that. I won't going to go through all the lot. This is the really interesting one for me.
Mm,
The read about, will AI, I'm willing to use AI, but if I don't want to use, or if I can't use AI, if it's not appropriate, if it can't help me, is it going to stop me reaching a human agent? Or is it going to, because we've seen this already with, IVR hell, with, speech recognition that, simply won't understand what you're talking about, or get answers completely inappropriately, with web chats that, say, oh, keep coming back to again and again and again. He asks you the same question. No, that's not what I want, but are you sure that's not what we've seen this already with
mm,
bad user
mm,
experience. So
mm.
people like thinking, I know what this is about. You're putting AI in here to hold me away from talking to somebody if I need to. Whether I need to or not, it's whether you think I need to or not, that's not important. It's whether, as a customer, if I think I need to talk to somebody for whatever reason, maybe it's complicated, maybe I want reassurance, maybe this, maybe that, maybe either. Maybe it's none of your business why I want to talk to an agent. I just want to.
Yeah.
Is this AI going to be here to stop me doing that? And there is a very strong feeling that, number one, yes, it will. And the second thing there, as you point out, in terms of age group, wow, the
Mm,
65 plus, they They really think this is being put in place to stop them. So that's one thing to consider is, are you, by the very dint of putting AI in here, making your customers, especially your older customers, really concerned and stressed and worried? So if you are going to implement, AI for customer service in the widest possible sense, you need to explain why that is. You need to say, this is the benefit for you. If you don't feel that this is what you want to do, it's fine. You can talk to an agent anytime you want. We're not going to make you jump through hoops and stuff like that. And that's why I recommend, just explaining that this is why we're using it. This is how you use it. And if you don't want to use it, don't worry about it. It's just for you, it's for your benefit. If you don't feel it's for your benefit, it's fine. Yeah. Reassure, reassure, reassure. Because if you don't, your customers are already, this chart shows me your customers are already extremely suspicious about why you're doing it.
And whilst there's differences in the age brackets on very concerned, if you look at very concerned and concerned,
Yeah.
every single age group,
yeah, this is it. So you got even the youngsters, the kids today who are down with the AI, 63% of them are still concerned or very concerned. Only 13% are not bothered. So yeah, even those who haven't been around and haven't had decades of, basically companies using automation to block them talking to someone, are still concerned that this is a thing. So yes, ignore this chart at your peril. And when you're implementing AI, as you surely will at some point, be aware that there's going to be pushback straight away. You might think it's the cat's whiskers, and it may well be, but your customers are, like I say, suspicious, to say the least, about why you're doing it and what it's going to mean to them if they actually need to talk to someone.
Great insight, because I'm looking at here a sea of concern across all of the age groups, and you're dead right. If you're looking to introduce AI, what this is saying is that regardless of age, customers want to know that they are going to still be able to reach a human agent, and how, you'd like to think, let's make that easy for them.
Absolutely. But this isn't all bad news. This is a warning, because elsewhere in different data, we ask customers, are you willing to at least try this? And customers, a lot of customers, or again, some people in the older age groups is like saying, no, we never want to do this. And you just have to accept that. But customers, they will try it. And if it's easier for them, nobody's picking up the phone for a chat, or not many people are picking up the phone for a chat. It's because it's the least effort overall to get the resolution that they want. So if you can provide them with a better channel, they will go back to that and keep using that. If you're just using it to cut your costs, then it's not going to work out. The other chart we've got here is one of our old favorites, customer channel preference. And we've just picked out the live telephony bit here because we'd look at the different types of interactions, so high emotion, high complexity, high urgency, and how those are changing over time. Customer preference for channels. So we look at high urgency. It used to be, it's not shown on this chart because it gets way too messy otherwise. But high urgency used to be about, as you might expect, web self-service. You go straight to the website, maybe that can help you out. And then in the COVID era, need for reassurance. Maybe the other channels weren't being supported effectively, but that went high. The preference for telephony really jumped then, and after pandemic, that it still remained high, very high. It's like more than 45% of customers last year wanted to pick up the phone if they got an urgent question, which to me was pretty amazing for me.
Yeah.
There is you can see a drop this year though, and again, what you can't see in this chart is that web self-service is rebounding. So web self-service and telephony are pretty much neck and neck for preference for urgent issues, and I would expect that as self-service improves, for that to overtake, because that is the better channel. It should, in theory, be the better channel for urgent issues, because it's right there. There's no queue time. That's the thing driving the high urgency for me. It's like no queue time. How can I do this most quickly? And obviously, if it's there on the website, that's far quicker than waiting in a queue, which I've seen can be pretty long. The other ones there, high complexity, that started around the 26-27% mark customer preference in 2018. The biggest one then, I think, was probably, believe it or not, face to face, especially as you would expect in older age groups. That's more of a kind of a longer term rise, slight rise in COVID. Obviously, face to face disappeared then pretty much, and it's stayed at the 40%, 45% mark since then. So that is very much, if you've got a complex issue, it's a pick up the phone territory. And the other one there is high emotion. That's pretty yeah, that's pretty interesting. That's that's pick up the phone. A lot of that's complaints. It's also the issue around kind of the other big one there is email.
Mm,
And that's something which we've seen a lot of for complaints is people like making complaints over it. If they don't like making complaints, but if they do, they do email. And some people, especially of the younger age group, are more likely to pick up the phone. So there's a difference there. But what this chart as a whole is saying to me is that voice is key. Voice is
yeah.
important. Voice is not going away. So yeah, that's kind of thing. What something I would like to throw in here is just because voice isn't going away doesn't mean it has to be live voice. Voice self-service has been, in the doldrums for a long time, in terms of the proportion of calls that it's handled, in terms of the kind of complexity, sophistication. It's touchtone IVR, which, I'm not going to labor the point with that, but it's fairly basic stuff. Speech recognition can be, as we know as consumers, hugely frustrating. And again, it's not really adding a great deal that touchtone doesn't. It's we're not able to talk to it and then for it in natural language in many cases, and for it to be able to go and do 20 or 30 different things, you're still pretty
Mm,
limited on what it can do. And I don't think that's why voice self-service hasn't really taken off as much as it could have done. I think that's going to change. I think with the advent of obviously AI, we've
yeah.
got natural language recognition, so we'll be able to understand what we're talking about, the context, who we are, perhaps look at what we've talked about before, and you know be able to help us in far more complex ways. I'm not saying it's ever going to be head to, but maybe 100 years in the future, head to head with what an agent can actually offer, but certainly expand itself away from the core of half a dozen really quite simple things that's currently on offer. So I think that's going to really, really help. The other thing I think is really going to help there is if somebody calls and they are given a voice bot, voice AI, whatever you want to call it, a voice agent, and if that agent then can't help and understands it can't help, and then seamlessly routes to an agent, from a customer's perspective, that looks like they're still on the same channel. They
Yeah.
consider that to be kind of first contact resolution, assuming the live agent can actually deal with that. And even if the voice agent, the AI voice agent can't help them, at least they've probably taken them through authentication in any case. So there's 45 seconds of the call saved there. So from the customer's perspective, it looks good. They're using their channel of preference. The business gets a chance to resolve this without having to go to a live agent. And if they can't, it's a seamless thing. The customer doesn't have to start talking, explaining their issue again. And I say at the very worst, then they're going to go through authentication and save you, I think, 72 pence on average on that call to do it through a live agent, if memory serves. So I'm a big fan of what voice AI can actually offer. I don't think it's one of those things we necessarily need to worry. If you're not doing it in the next 6 or 12 months, it's not going to be the end of the world. We're at the foot of a very big mountain where AI is concerned, and this mountain keeps growing as they
Mm,
add, more sophistication and more use cases and more this and that and the other. So I know there are organizations that are really panicking and saying, we've got to do AI now, we've got to do AI now. That wouldn't be my recommendation. It's like look for a
Thank
low
you so
risk
much
use
for
case that's got a
watching this
definite
video. If you
provable
haven't
ROI.
already, please do
Look
subscribe
for where your
to
costs are.
Get Out a Wrap here on YouTube.
Don't necessarily assume it has to be
And we
customer
will
facing.
share lots
And say
more
post-call
content.
work for
I
many
can bring
organizations
you
is,
this
a
episode
good
and all
place
of
to
my
start,
content
good place to
thanks
test
to
this type
my
of thing.
partners,
It's
the
not
forum
mission
and Better
critical,
Outsourcing.
but it
And of
has got,
course,
the potential
if
to
you
make
have
pretty
team
significant and
leaders
measurable
and
cost
you
savings that you
wish
can then go
to
to executives and say,
help
this is what
them
we did
develop day
before
by
and
day,
after.
then
And,
please do talk to me
rather
about
than
the team leader
throwing a customer
community.
facing
And I will see
generative
you
AI
on
bot
the
out there and,
next episode. Thanks for
crossing
watching.
fingers and hoping for the best and hope, saying, oh yeah, we'll reduce half of our headcount in 3 months. No. So yeah, that would be my thing. But yeah, my story here is like voice is very much alive and well, and I don't see any evidence that it's going to disappear overnight or even for a very long time, if ever.
I I love it. And again, this has just been a little snippet of the fascinating content that you can find in Contact Babel, the UK Contact Center Decision Makers Guide. And that is available free from www.contactbabel.com. Steve, thank you so much for coming in. I'm probably going to be asking you to come back on when we find other chapters that I like, and just maybe you can keep me up to date on whether letters ever go past zero point 0.7. Come on, the letters.
Well, hey, it's up to you. If you want to do that, you send in your letters and, we'll see those numbers going up to see how high we can get them.
Yeah. But yes, and Steve, where else can people kind of engage with you to chat about some of the because it's not just this report, is it? You do absolutely loads.
Yeah, we do. So we've got, we look specifically around customer experience. So we do a lot of the stuff we do is in the UK, obviously. We mirror everything we do in the UK and the US too. We went into South Africa late last year, had a very successful launch of our first report there, trying to drum up some interest in going back into Australia and New Zealand in the summer. So we look at everything we do is based on data, and within the UK we have things like, if you need to know things about your specific vertical market, we have a lot of kind of vertical market things, because obviously business issues, stats, operational things, HR, they're all very different depending on which vertical you're looking at. So this report here really looks, within the report we do break things down by sector as well, but we have dedicated reports looking at vertical markets. So yeah, just have a hack around on the website, see what you like. Pretty much everything's free, and if you need something and can't find it, then drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be very happy to help.
I love it. Steve, thank you for coming on, and thanks for producing this report for 23 years. And I look forward to the next 23.
I might still be here, yes. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching another episode of Get Out a Wrap. These happen regularly, so if you haven't already, please do hit subscribe. If you are a contact center leader that cares about the development of your team leaders, then please do talk to me about the team leader community, the only online community in the world for team leaders and aspiring agents to develop every single day. We have 730 members and we're growing all the time, so why not get involved? And see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.